welcome to Polyphony Music Resources ongoing conversations with conductors, composers, hymn writers, teachers, and church musicians and artists who are contributing to the life of the church today. I'm Kyle Damron, coordinator and interviewer slash facilitator for these conversations. And joining me are two exceptional leaders in church life today, as well as in the choral music scene in North America and beyond, Emily Floyd and Tim Sharp. Emily Floyd is director for traditional music at Covenant Presbyterian Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. She has served as a church musician in Presbyterian, Methodist, and Baptist churches across several states and began her career teaching high school chorus. Emily is passionate about congregational song, adventurous worship, and creating high-quality music experiences for all ages. She is co-director of the Choristers Guild Institute, president of the Presbyterian Association of Musicians, and serves on ACDA's Southern Division Repertoire and Resource Committee. Tim Sharp is a conductor, composer, and educator whose work spans concert, performance, choral research, and innovative teaching. He serves as associate pastor for the arts at Madison Street United Methodist Church in Clarksville, Tennessee. In 2024, he became professor of music innovation and entrepreneurship at Trevecca University in Nashville. He formerly served 13 years as executive director of the American Choral Directors Association, and he's a life fellow of Clare Hall at Cambridge. And outside of music, Tim, alongside his family, runs Sango Farm near Nashville, where they care for cows, chickens, alpacas, and vegetables. So truly a modern day Renaissance man. Welcome, Emily and Tim. It's so good to have you today and to discuss the large theme of the church choir today and how to lead a church choir these days. I want to begin our conversation by acknowledging how church choirs are not exactly as they once were. They are not our grandmother's choirs anymore. So let's talk about the changing landscape, if you will. And I will begin by addressing this to you, Tim, by asking, when we look at church choirs today, what's changed? How are things different than they were, say, 10 to 20 years ago, let alone over 20 years ago?
Thank you, Kyle. And thank you to you and Polyphony for taking on this project. I think it's an incredibly good topic and one that we need to refresh ourselves with constantly. For me, the big change has been commitment. Ever since COVID, when many things moved into that particular space that we had always seen as our own, and it was without a lot of threat, suddenly we find ourselves in a situation where people have the double whammy on us of not having the same commitment levels that were there in the past. They had begun to wane before COVID, but certainly I felt a difference afterwards. And the other COVID issue was the amount of activity that moved into that space. So that we're competing now with lots of travel teams, activities, and it goes on, depend on your culture, your context. So I think those two are two of the big changes that we have to grapple with when we're dealing with our scheduling and all the issues we'll discuss in this podcast.
All right. So when we look at the church choirs today, Tim, would you say that how are you dealing with responding to the contemporary schedules and the live schedules of those in your church choir?
Yes, I have found that I'm much more project oriented than I have been in all of my conducting and rehearsing career. I have to have strong projects and elements that people plug into that's more than the weekly anthem service music schedule. I find that I have to have people buying into larger blocks of time where they not only feel engaged, and engagement is huge, but they also realize that they are a part of something that's growing. It's always been there, but I think the project-based approach that I've taken much more assertively has helped that situation. And what I mean by project-based, we all know what a project looks like when we're talking about a seasonal program, something like a Christmas work or a Christmas event that people want to be a part of and they know they've been a part of in the past. Now I find myself doing that throughout the entire calendar year so that it's one project after other that people are plugging into. I think that has probably been the biggest shift that I have. The other thing that I've done, Kyle, is I have now moved to multiple rehearsal options. Not only do I have my, let's say, Wednesday night, and some of our folks may have Thursday night rehearsals that have been there, but I also have two other options that I'm giving people based on those projects. One is I have a Sunday morning pre-service rehearsal that's longer and extended, and it's able to pick up people that maybe travel during the week. And I'll have another night of the week that I rehearse my specific project, not just Sunday's anthem, but the particular projects that we're working on. I rehearse that on another night. And I've also found it a great recruitment tool to bring in other community people. So I have three rehearsal options now, and some of that is geared around this project that I spoke to.
Gotcha. So it sounds like um, using the term on ramping, you're finding different ways for people to get on into the chorus by not just one ramp, but multiple ramps um, through drop in choir projects. And so gone are the days of just traditional choral programming where you just expect people just to show up. It
Right.
sounds like
And of
you're
course, that yes, and that has big pedagogical implications too, which we will get into. But because of those multiple options now, I've had to change the way I do things each one of those options that we're, as you say, that we're finding ramping on options available.
yeah. Well, it sounds like flexibility is key here. And thinking about participation year round and creating flexible ways to participate for the choir. Um, Emily, do you have thoughts to add to that in regards to the changing choir landscape these days?
Yes, the peace monks are coming through Charlotte today, and that leads me to be thinking about the restorative nature of music, especially in a church community when we're singing about our faith. I think gone are the days where we think, well, did I hit a Renaissance piece? Did I hit a Baroque piece? I need a romantic, or I need this particular choral standard, or I'm matching this scripture for worship. But I'm thinking more about what people need for their souls. I think if you go to any non-sacred concert, if you think about a city's community choir or university choirs, all of us are programming repertoire differently because just music's sake, we can do more than that. We can speak to people's spirits. We can capture listeners or worshipers or audience members in a different way if we go more perhaps through a thematic lens than just historical, musical time periods, or just singing the standard, the greats. We're getting more creative.
Mhm. Emily, how does choral programming, when you say it's not for choral music's sake anymore, um, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Mhm. I think we're telling a story. I once took over for the great Bob Chambliss and at Shallowford Presbyterian in Atlanta, and on the whiteboard was something at the top that said, "Tell God's story." And I thought, well, I shouldn't erase that. That seems pretty significant. There's a reason that that was left on the whiteboard when he retired. And at the end of a year, I finally thought it's time to erase this little mantra up here, tell God's story. And I began asking and learning that that was a really powerful message that before they went to worship on Sunday mornings, Bob would say, let's remember to tell God's story. And I think that is a powerful example of what we're doing. We're telling God's story. We're telling a story. And so that stuck with me, and I've tried to remember that wisdom that we are telling God's story. Another thing is just ministry. I think people more than ever need to be ministered to. All churches are filled with broken people. We're all broken. We all need to be refreshed, to be restored. And so, as I'm programming or thinking about repertoire to use in worship services or in projects, I'm thinking about how we're ministering to people. So, that's kind of at the top of my list right now, some kind of common thread, telling God's story and ministering to people.
Mhm. Tim, how do you approach programming?
Yes, I to echo Emily's great points there. Um, the why of what we're doing is always in my forefront, and those whys there's multiple whys. She's hit big ones there with the ministry that we do, the calling, God's story, the historical story, the church story, my own contextual situation. I'm focusing, why am I doing this? Where are we going? But why am I doing it? So that is a driver, and I'm working easily, like most of us, we have to be working 6 months off out. Um, I'm working now, I'm working now on Christmas and Advent next year. That is what's going on in my head. One of the reasons it's fun about that's fun is that I'm so fresh on what we just did. We all take notes and we go into our Google Docs and we do our postmortems and our debriefs. We do those, but I find that if I do some planning early on to say, how am I going to work on that for next year? Maybe not specifically what work in this and that detail, but on the big picture things, I find that I'm way down the road, and I'll be thinking about that all year long once I get the outline in place. So from the large to the small, then on any particular work that I'm doing, I'm working 6 to 8 weeks off. So if I'm programming or rehearsing tonight, I'm already rehearsing for Ash Wednesday. I mean that is where I'm headed. 6 to 8 weeks on any particular piece that has any significance to it. Now the why. Yeah, I think that's contextual. As Christians, we have a core why, but also I have a particular staff that I'm working with, and a particular theme in my church that I'm working with, and of course I have the lectionary there, but not all pastors preach it, and mine varies as well. So there is that piece of it, which is part of that storytelling that Emily's talking about. And I want it to be a certainly an experiential approach. I really believe we are dealing with stories, and we're dealing with the emotions of those stories. So
Mm.
I'm trying to give different aspects of an emotional, intelligent spectrum there when I'm choosing my literature. I'm trying to realize that my people come charged into rehearsal, having seen the evening news, for example, and they're not coming there in isolation. So all of that to me feeds this sort of why am I doing this piece? Why am I doing this particular season? And so it starts with a why, and then getting down to the specifics. That really is quite fun for me. That's the artistic part, the repertoire part, to look at this beautiful array of repertoire. And when I think about emotions, I'm trying to think about not style of music, but what emotion does that piece of
Yeah.
music elicit? Because I think if I can get to that, there are no worship wars or style wars if I can get to the emotion that's working on. So I found a long time ago that if I can deal with the emotional aspect of the storytelling, that I don't have to worry too much about what style of music is it coming through. I hope that's not too vague, but that's really my 30,000 foot approach to my programming.
Thank you. We can talk more about programming later and explore how you
Mhm.
choose repertoire. But let's first talk about the proverbial elephant in the room, the director. How does the director shape the choral music ministry? Emily, to you first. How much does the person and the personality of the director shape the choir's culture?
I think it's a big factor that we sometimes overlook or forget. I remember being an intern at Dr. Phillips High School in Orlando many years ago, and my supervising teacher, I was trying to get everything right, textbook teaching where I was giving good feedback and sequential and, I wasn't talking too much, all the things that good gesture, all the things that we're taught to do. And she just looked at me and said, "Where is your personality? Please bring your personality to this classroom." And that stuck with me many years ago that, we're each unique. We have particular strengths that we bring to what we do. And I wouldn't say one particular personality is the perfect one for ministry or leading a choir. I think we've all experienced very introverted people who are perhaps information seekers. I'm thinking of like a number 5 on the Enneagram scale. I'm a number 3 on the Enneagram scale. I'm more of an achiever personality. And I really lean into the relationship side. Like Tim, I'm thinking a lot about emotions. Are we bringing out longing? Are we bringing out passion? Is this declarative? Is this lilting? What is the emotion that we're trying to bring out? And so I've long thought that if you can bring your healthiest self to the podium, to the relationships, to the staff meetings, all the aspects of your job that if you're in a healthy place, your personality can be one of your greatest assets. Um, I remember trying to recruit that in schools, I could do that more easily. And when I went to more of a full-time church thing, you've got to recruit people. That's getting people to onboard, as you say, offering those multiple on-ramps. But I have had discussions with friends just saying multiple approaches to people, multiple asks to sort of win them over, but non-anxiously, using your personality to invite them multiple times without anxiety, without, a vampire sort of, we need you, we're desperate for people, but more just an invitation to come join in the joy, the caring of one another. And just music itself is compelling. Music, despite what I said before, that just for music's sake is maybe not in the moment right now. We need more, but music is compelling. Music plus community plus telling God's story. It's a compelling place to be. So bringing our personality to the table, being relational, knowing what's going on in their lives is really important. And I think about a time where Tim and I were together having dinner, and I was talking about visioning, and I was struggling a little bit with how to channel what to do. And Tim very smartly said to me, once you know what you're accomplishing now, you sort of get that in your mind, you've got your plan, you're executing that, and just execute that for 6 months or a year, and then begin to think about what's next. And then feed that. It was very helpful to me because I think our job as the leader is to vision cast, to set the vision and execute the vision. So those are some things I think about those relationships and visioning often.
Yeah. Tim, do you want to unpack that advice that you gave Emily a little bit more here in this?
Well, there are so many ways you can go, but getting back to the why and the vision, you're the only one that's going to do that. Those folks are looking for you for leadership. It's why it's so hard for us to send a substitute. I could get Robert Shaw Incarnate to come back, but they like me better. And it, and not that he's not a better pedagogue, of course he was, but it's me, and they're used to me, and they're used to my pastoral style. They're used to, so once I decide that course of action, they're going to follow that course. And I feel like, because of this kind of concern that Emily and I are saying that we put into that, we only have a little bit of time. And at 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, I can't do anything about, I mean, I can prepare, but I can't. The time I have them in that room, when Emily says she brings her best self, absolutely. I mean, that time that we have, and I work that plan. I'm very systematic about my steps. I have 6 weeks on that particular anthem as a countdown. I am working that plan down to the minute. I even, in my rehearsal, I rate every piece of music easy, medium, or difficult. I know how many weeks I need to rehearse a difficult piece. This is my own pedagogy, but I know how many weeks I need to rehearse a medium difficulty. I know how many weeks I need to rehearse an easy piece. If it's a repeated piece that I've done before it's different. If it's a brand new piece, I know all those things. I know if it's got polyphony in it. I know how many weeks that's going to take. If it's a simple chorus, I know how many times from a gestation period, how many times the choir needs to see it before I dare take it into the sanctuary. Not for notes and rhythm, pitches and rhythms, for their comfort level. All of those things have to do with pacing. And so, to Emily's point, once you have your plan, I work that plan. I have confidence in my analysis and where I'm going, and I work that plan. And I have to say, I just trust. I've been down that road before, and I trust those kind of axioms that I've put into place. And Kyle, just to go back to what I said earlier, when I said that I choose a piece and I want to know the why, there was a time in my career where the reason I chose a piece is, get this, because I liked it. I mean, I would go to an ACDA conference and I would hear a piece and say, "Ooh, I want to do with that with my choir because I liked it." And honestly, I'm telling on myself, there's so many levels of that. And that's not the why that I'm saying I'm using anymore. Yeah, I want to like it. I can't do any music I don't like. I mean, that's very hard for me. But it's more than just me. Tim likes that tune, or this is the latest tune that's come out from Hillsongs or something. That doesn't work for me. I have to have a much deeper. And then once I do that, I think I am set to go. And one other thing I'll say, there's three things that we've learned about people and how they will follow a conductor. One thing, they do follow someone that's charismatic. People like to see your passion. They also will follow someone that's confident in what they're doing. But I can fake both of those. I can fake confidence and I can fake charisma. What I can't fake is the third thing that people are looking for in a conductor, and that is knowledge. But I find that if I have the knowledge and I've done my work, the charisma and the confidence are going to come easily once I've done the work. There are nights I don't feel charismatic, but I know I have to fake it. There are times that I may not be confident that this particular pedagogy is going to work, and I experiment. But I am confident in my knowledge of the work because I have done my homework. So I build everything off of knowledge, knowing that I can that confidence and charisma are going to come when I've got my plan solidly in place.
Right.
I want to add one more thing, if I might. Just rolling out the vision. For me, February is coming, and in my church, Black History Month is going to be a big part of what we're accomplishing. I'm so excited about our approach and what we're doing, and working with culture bearers that are within my choir and my congregation. And so we're doing a big, Handel's "Sing unto God with high affections raise," and that's a big sing. It's January. We have very few rehearsals. I made the decision. I have to have the knowledge to get all that polyphony and get that rolled out so that they'll feel confident. But I've told them my philosophy is we need this buoyant, uplifting work before we go into a much different type of repertoire in February. And then on the heels of February is Lent, which is a much different type of repertoire. And so they understand my vision of we need this, buoyant, quick moving, kinesthetic piece. It's a big sing, but then we have a bunch of spirituals, gospel, Richard Smallwood died. We're going to honor that. And then it's on to Lent. And so now they're willing to take up that mantle and do a little bit of woodshedding for the handle quickly because they know the why. And so just wanted to talk about sometimes when you explain your vision, people can get right on board. When they understand what you're trying to execute, they will follow with your knowledge, your charisma, your confidence. I love that, Tim.
Yeah, this is rich. Very good. So let's explore a bit more about the director besides his, her, or their personality and leadership in the choral rehearsal. Let's talk about how the director outside the choral hall, outside the choir room, is a recruiter who works to get people, new people, to show up for choir. Let's talk about recruitment and sustaining the choir for the long haul. Tim, what are your thoughts on recruitment and how you approach it?
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, I feel like I'm always recruiting. There is no recruiting season. You are recruiting 13 months out of the year. There's not a moment I'm not trying to pull someone in. That's the reason I've got these three different doors that you can come through. I realize that there are people who travel, childcare issues. There are people who lots of different issues. That's why I've created the particular ones in the context that I'm in, so that I have three different doors people can come through, so that really commitment and convenience hopefully is not negative anymore, that I've opened that particular door. So I'm always recruiting. Also, I'm always recruiting with a mind toward multi-generations. I don't believe there's just one trick to recruitment. I think you have to go through lots of different doors. And for that, I mean, I've got high school singers that I'm trying to get that want to be, that love singing and that want to be doing more. I've got adults of different aspects of my congregation that I want to be seen up there in the choir loft visually. I want my choir to represent my whole church, not just a certain demographic. I think that's very important. So I've got an eye toward making sure that I'm reaching out and being very, very what's the word, aggressive in my looking to represent the look of the congregation. I am always looking in the community. I'm talking to people in the congregation. I'm asking people in the congregation, who are my spies out there that hear someone singing and it sounds really pretty good. I'm looking for visitors, and I'm in the narthex after service, greeting people to see what their interests are. And I think that's very good for the church, because engagement is significant for church in these days, and so the choir is a place they can plug in. So I would say my biggest advice there, Kyle, is I have a mindset of recruitment all the time, and I feel like it's my job. I think balance is my job. Blend. I share that responsibility with my choir members. Blend is something they can help me with, but balance is something I have to be working on, and they can help me a little bit, but for the most part, I've got to make those particular things work. And then I'll say one more thing about recruitment. In my choices of literature, you've got to choose literature for the choir you have. A lot of balance and blend issues are we sometimes choose pieces that are not right for that particular choir. So hold on to it. There may be another time that piece, but if you just don't have the voicing for that, don't force it on a choir that set them up for success. And there's just so much literature out there. You should not have a voicing problem finding something that works for the particular group that you have. I do subscribe to the philosophy there's no such thing as a bad choir, only questionable conductors. And so I feel like that's something I have to fix myself. And recruitment's always tattooed on the front of my head, that I look at somebody and say, can I get them in choir? And I feel like that is just a given. I don't think there's an option.
Right. Emily, what are your thoughts on recruitment?
I'm going to echo what Tim said, that it's a continuous, constant, all year thing. My husband told me about a quote that a football coach, I think, said one time. He said, recruiting is like shaving. You must do it every day or you look like a bum. So that's my mantra to Tim is, always be recruiting. The other thing I'll say is multiple asks, multiple touches is a good thing. I have a family of, the mom and the daughter were great singers. The daughter went on to be a professional singer, and the brother told his family, "No way am I going to sing in that youth choir. You can't make me, not happening." And after he graduated from high, well, I got him into the choir by multiple asks. And then after he graduated from high school, he sang in college and is still a paid singer in a church now. So they tell the story that I was just very non-anxious when I would repeatedly invite him. It looked like fun. And so about the fourth or fifth time, I just said, "Hey, Connor, you remember we'd love to have you. If you think this might be interesting at all or a good thing for you to do in your life, join us at any time." They just said it wasn't the first, second, or third time that took. It was the coming back. One of my little strategies that I use, many of us are trying to recruit young adults, and texting and emailing, of course, getting that data. If they're a visitor that the church has identified as someone who's come a few times and you've got that data to get their number or their email, I find multiple ways to come back and revisit that ask. Sometimes I don't give complete information. I might just talk about the rehearsal. We rehearse in at this time, and I might want to come back and have another reason to say, "Oh, I wanted to let you know we rehearse in the choir room, which is located under the sanctuary," or "Let me tell you about Sunday mornings. We warm up at 10 o'clock." Sometimes I'll purposefully not give full information so that I can have another reason to touch back again.
Mhm.
I think that helping your church know that they can also help recruit is an important step in recruiting. I once had a church administrator say to me, for this Christmas concert that we put on with professional orchestra, and usually about 1,000 people came to it. She said to me, we have this whole blank spot at the bottom of the printed program. Don't you want to put something there? And I said, yes. How about if you know a child, a teen, or an adult who should be singing with us, please contact Emily Floyd. And that became sort of a phrase or something that was printed in multiple places on the website, in other newsletters and other places. That's something that the church staff began to pick up and just repeat. And then people in the congregation began seeing it as their responsibility or their opportunity, I should say, to invite, someone new moved into our street and I just know they should be a part of our church. They would benefit from being a part of it. And I wonder if they might sing. I'm going to ask them. So if you can involve systems in your church to help recruit, that's important too. I'm in a very big system now at my new church, and there is a systematic way that every Monday morning we get the visitors report with the full data. That's, it's incredible. Not all of us have that resource, but there can be a way that you systemize people with eyes to be looking on Sunday. Tim, you mentioned you purposefully go to the narthex to look and see, are there new faces? Um, get a volunteer crew to start looking with that kind of eye to also ask people. That culture of recruiting is something you can work on.
Great. What I've gathered in listening to you so far, the two of you so far, is that um, to sum it up, recruitment's about the future. It's about the sustainability of the choir, obviously, and sustainability depends on vision, a clear vision, and a plan, and having that plan and going with it, having accessible entry points, multiple entry points, like the three doors Tim mentioned throughout the year, with given project, having different projects, different rehearsal times, offering meaningful experiences through the music and the choral experience. So that leads me to ask to want us to talk about those meaningful experiences for the choir and for the congregation and others who hear the choir's music. How do you go about selecting the literature? Emily, I'm going to start with you first on that and then pass it to Tim.
Well, I look at the greats, the things that mentors and others are using often. I want to take that as a sign that it's worthy. So that staying power is really important. I look for music that's restorative, something that, Stephen Paulus's Pilgrim's Hymn, even before I call on your name to ask you, oh God, there's something about that text. I love Todd Wilson's The Call of Wisdom. I'm calling, do you hear me? That's God's voice, music for healing, for hope, I think is an important lens that I look at. I do look at different time periods of music. One of the things I'm thinking about, kind of harkening back to the recruiting, if we have someone in their 20s or 30s who did sing, often it's through school choirs and that repertoire that lasts, thinking about Brahms, Haydn, Handel, Palestrina, those kind of transcendent experiences they had in a school choir, they might harken back to that in a nostalgic way. And I might dangle, we're singing some Mendelssohn or we're singing some Mozart, and I think that can be a good recruiting tool. So I look at that to make sure there's some young major composers that young singers might be drawn to. Certainly creative repertoire, Craig Hella Johnson, Light of a Clear Blue Morning, Sean Kirchner, there's a lot, Kyle Peterson, there's a lot of cutting edge, unexpected kind of repertoire that is certainly compelling and exciting to sing. Any kind of major work, a sort of long-term goal that they know they're doing this sort of mountaintop, there's a requiem that we look forward to, or end of the year, there's a masterwork that we're going to do with strings or with orchestra, with instrumentation, that can be very compelling and, of course, very appealing to younger generation singers. So that's something I look at often, kind of like a menu or what I'm putting on the plate. Is it a well-balanced plate?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tim, literature.
Yes, and I'll take a different approach, a little bit approach that I know Emily would concur with. Uh, we're both really getting down to a thing that we don't take for granted. That's text. We all really do start with the text, I think. I mean, these composers that have done such good jobs, and we have our favorites, and we know ones that work for us, but we're still looking at text. So, of course, I'm looking seasonally, I'm looking lectionary, I'm looking thematic, I'm looking at texts. I start there, and that's my first pass. Then, I, with my own what I love in terms of composers, I am looking at the ones that have treated it well. So uh, I do have those pieces that I find over and over again work well. I remember back when I was in my publishing days, I would tour the country with Fred Bach, and Fred had a favorite 23rd Psalm for it, and he would say to me often, "Why would anybody, when the 23rd Psalm comes up, why would you do anyone but that one?" And I won't say which one he was thinking about, but that's you. We have those feelings. We know that when Ubi Caritas comes along, we know which one we probably want to go to. Once in a while, we say, "Well, we've sung that one a few times. Does anyone else treat it well?" I mean, we all do that, but it started with Ubi Caritas. It started with the 23rd Psalm, and so that's where we do begin. And then I'm with Emily. I am trying to get a balanced meal. I mean, I'm stylistically, I have my own approach to pop music and pop culture. It's kind of an unusual approach, but I'm not doing just the latest tune that's come down the worship songs trail. I have another way of scratching the pop culture itch that I like doing. But I think even more important than that, I find that it's not that itch that people really want scratched. They just want music to be exciting and they want an emotional connection to it. So I believe I can sell that when I've made the right choice. So I am looking for the right marriage of that music to that text. And then I'm trying to give that balance that Emily has articulated there. And that's a fun part. That really is fun. I do try to mix my rehearsal. I mean, I'm not going to kill my choir with 6 difficult pieces for the next 6 weeks. It's going to have a nice little variety of easy, medium, and difficult. And in that variety, there's going to be some pieces from the library. There are going to be pieces that I brought back. If I'm doing How Lovely Is Thy Dwelling Place, it's only one piece for me. It's Brahms. Now, the good news is I've rehearsed it. My choir knows it. If they hadn't, that's an 8-week journey. So that's the way I kind of look at things, is that I want that have that same, it's a like 3-dimensional. I want to have the text first, I want to have the right emotion with the text, then I want to have an easy, medium, difficult road, and I want stylistically to really hook a lot of people. Now, the good news about my sanctuary experience is I want something to be transcendent. I really do. I want a transcendent worship experience, but I also want something to be what I might even call recreational. I don't mind a mantra for a prayer. I don't mind saying a Taizé line over and over again if it's for the purpose of a prayer or communion Sunday. So all of that is incredibly intentional based on where it fits in the service and the text. And I get great joy out of planning that meal that we've outlined. Do I hit the mark all the time? Could I have done it better? I bet if I had you 3 in the room, I would be better every week, because the only assistant I have is Chat GPT, and it does not know what I know about what I just said. So I don't really have a friend that will discuss that next service with me. Even the pastor can't, because they don't have the emotional awareness that I have of those anthems. So all that to say, that planning piece of choosing those pieces, that's why I'm saying I'm 6 months off in my planning, because I want to go out on my tractor and think about that scripture for a while before I pick up the phone and call my music service to push the button on that purchase. I want to be really sure that that's the piece, and that takes me a while to kind of run that through my mind, and I'm sure that's true of most people. I'm just, I guess I'm saying the intentionality of this is what we're really driving at, and then of course the pedagogy pulls from that. Once I look at the piece, as Emily said, I have my favorite arrangers. If I'm going to do a contemporary Christian tune, I know who arranges it really well. And for me, that's someone like Jack Schrader, or a more contemporary Jack Schrader. There are those people that arrange those pieces and have the rights to those, and they think chorally. I'm not I'm not trying to force fit a solo song on my choir. I'm putting a choral piece that's idiomatically choral in their hands. And if that arranger doesn't do it, I have arrangers that I'll ask to arrange it for my choir, because I want it to be choral. I do not want to force a solo song on. I don't want to force a clarinet concerto on a tuba player. That it's not idiomatic. So that's part of that intentionality that goes into it for me, is choosing the right arrangement, the right position, composition for the right text, emotionally speaking and contextually within the service.
Right. Let's talk about how we rehearse all this repertoire you select. Let's talk about the design of the structure of the rehearsal, because that's an art into itself, right? Emily, what's your approach these days?
Well, I'm in a new context, and was in a new context a few years ago. So I've been in the good fortune of being in new environments and having to cement, my philosophy. And there were lots of years where the warm up was longer and more teaching time and purposeful. I've been chosen to be very, very purposeful and limiting the warm up time. The thing I would say that I think that I need to spend more time on, that's occurring to me recently, is that I don't sing enough scales with a church choir. And I think that could be beneficial for tuning and all kinds of things, Oh, I don't need to do a scale. I'm 70 years old. I've been, I know, but there's something to the rigor. You think of the Shaw warm-ups that were so regimented. Anyway, I'm more and more now being more purposeful and limiting that warm-up time. I typically do anywhere from at least 7 to 10 anthems in one rehearsal. Um, uh, let's see. I have an hour and 45 minutes of rehearsal, so that's very, very fortunate. And do about 7 to 10 minutes on each anthem. So not long. Some people choose to do larger chunks, rehearse something for 20 or 30 minutes, one song for 20 or 30 minutes. And I do more 7 to 10 minutes for each piece. If I have to do a larger chunk and dwell on something longer, it's because it's a more difficult piece. It's part of a movement. It itself, it takes a longer time for that movement to sing, right? It's not a 3.5 minute anthem, it's a 6 or 8 minute anthem or movement. The final 15 minutes, I tend to save sort of like a sprint. So things that are sing through, we just want to remind ourselves of this. We want to accomplish one thing. There's one phrase I want to work on. Or perhaps it's an unfamiliar hymn. Perhaps it's a benediction or something that is just a vroom or an up ramp, and something familiar at the end of the rehearsal, sort of a carrot, something that lets them leave feeling confident, joyful, and wanting to come back again. And then some sage advice given to me was save enough time for the prayer time. As we care for one another, as we are in community, prayer concerns, things, more and more prayer concerns are about things that are happening in the world and not just so and so sick or a diagnosis. It's the prayer concerns I'm receiving are on a larger scale. And so saving some time for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important. The community aspect too. Yeah, thank you. Tim, what's your approach in rehearsal planning structure?
Right. I spend the first 5 minutes of my rehearsal getting people's head in the game. I know that they're coming, and that's whether it's Sunday morning before worship service or Wednesday evening or on one of my other optional rehearsals. I know that they're coming from somewhere, and not on, and it's not so much the body hasn't warmed up. By 7 o'clock at night, your body is about as warm as it's going to get. But I think what I have to do is get their head in the game. And to Emily's point, that head in the game may be tuning. It may be now we're not just slinging things. Now we're thinking about half steps. We're thinking about a little bit of higher third. We're thinking about vowels. We are not going from the casual atmosphere that we've been. We're going into this focused atmosphere that's the world of sound. And something that's going to move us to a more profound alleluia, right? So, in that time, I am trying to get their heads into we are now working at getting distractions away from anything that's taking away from that word. So, I've got to get their heads into that focus, and that's every week. Now, I don't do mindless warm-ups that are but what I do is I try, like I'm sure many people do, I try to let my warm up be a little snippet from something that's getting ready to happen. Now, sometimes that's a range thing, sometimes that may be a tuning thing, sometimes it may just be a blending choral thing, but I'm trying to get their heads into now we're going to refine it. So my warm up is not just muscle warm up. Certainly, I'm stretching a little. Yeah, we're dealing with muscles. But for those 5 minutes, mostly I'm trying to get their head into the focus game. And then I go right to the Sunday's anthem, the material for Sunday, because I want to catch them fresh. I know they're very familiar, but after 6 weeks of us working on it, they're very familiar with what is getting ready to happen. But they're also a little anxious because Sunday's coming. So I put that energy into that piece and really get down to it, knowing that I have one more fine-tuning moment on Sunday morning, but in which I really go into that focus zone. But on Wednesday evening, I'm saying, now here it comes, and we're really getting down to the things that we worked on. I'm with Emily. I'm not going to spend more than 7 or 8 minutes on any one piece that evening, but that 7 minutes on that piece is going to be refining what's coming Sunday. And then I go to the hardest music of the evening. Right after that, hopefully they've been successful. They're feeling good. They're feeling choral. Their head's in the game. And bam, here comes the counterpoint. Here comes the melismas. Here comes those augmented fourths. Here comes those awkward things. But I have their energy, and I'm going into the hardest material right in, and that moves into the fillet of the rehearsal, where I'm working the hardest in the stuff that's maybe introducing new stuff. It may be the new material too. Then, just like Emily, on my return, there is a golden mean in a rehearsal. You're about 2/3 of the way through. You are in the zone, and that I know that moment is a really precious moment. That may be where I'm really getting into my spiritual defining of why we're doing this piece and what I'm trying to achieve there. Maybe a little philosophical at that point, because I think everyone's bought in at that point. Now, I will say I am not talking, even though we're talking here in my rehearsals, I'm mostly singing. I'm making a correction and I'm back in the music. I find that people talk way too much in a rehearsal, and they need to be singing more, because that precious time of tuning that instrument is only going to happen when they're making sounds. So I don't go cognitive. I go one thing I'm trying to teach, and then I apply it. Even if I go into sectionals, I'm gonna work on that sectional. We come back together. I make them do it. I don't say we woodshed it and then we'll get to it next week. We put it back together right when we come back in from the sectional, if I use sectional. But that's the time I do sectionals, is right near that area, because in a way they can take the break and you can almost start fresh again after they've had that little sectional moment to change the pace. Obviously, you're not going to do all the sectionals, so they've been used to a little bit of different energy at that point, and then you got them back together. I'm totally with Emily. In the last third of that rehearsal, I am looking at things that either are a couple of weeks away, or I just need to go through this hymn or service material that I can almost be a little recreational there and let them enjoy singing without me correcting everything. There is going to be a limit to how much they're going to hear you give directions in an hour and 45 minutes. At some point, it's nice to back off and let them just ride the wave for a little while. And that's usually my last third of the rehearsal, is looking at the service material or things that we just want to sing through that we know well, that we're repeating from the past, that sort of thing. So that's sort of the pacing that I'm going at, is I warm up on purpose. And then with Emily, I agree at the end, I am going to leave time there for prayer and community building. We keep announcements to the absolute minimal. They're on the board, they're in a piece of paper, they're in people's calendars. We're not going to roll on about that kind of stuff. If I can write it down, I write it down and hand it out. I don't spend a lot of time with commercials. So that's how I approach, again, the rehearsal. Now, getting down to the micro part of how I rehearse counterpoint, I think that's a different podcast. So that's probably as deeply detailed as I can get right there on my pacing.
Yeah. Emily, Tim's raised a good point about pacing and refraining from talking too much in the rehearsal. How do you make sure you limit how much you speak in a rehearsal? I assume you are of the same mind as Tim on that.
Yes. Yes. That good old 7 words or less. There are a couple of things I picked up over the years. When I want them to write something down, I say pencils. And if they get their pencil in hand, then I can say it and then they'll write it. So my choirs are quite used to pencils. The special conducting hand comes out and I show where the breath is. I would not be a fan of, on page 1, we're going to lift here. Now turn to page 2. I would like you to carry that, you could go over the whole piece like that, but I've trained them that I will show it. If you see this, or if you see this, have a pencil in hand and just do a tick mark if you see me do that. If I give a carry sign, mark it in. So some things like that where it's systemized that they're reading my body language and I'm not having to speak about it is really, really helpful. Of course, I'm training them to do a lot of eye contact because they'll pick up so much more from what they see as they're singing rather than me having to spell it out with a lot of verbiage.
Great. Tim, anything to add to Emily's points there?
Yeah, I love what she said about gesture. This is where gesture really does matter. And you have to teach people to watch you. And my what I love about Emily, what she said was you got to give them something to watch you for. And so
Yeah.
with the pencils up, ready to go, absolutely. You're showing here comes a moment. It's at the end of a four measure phrase. You're either going to lift there or you want it to carry there. My choir is used to seeing either that or, as she says, we're lifting here. And I'm not beyond shouting lift once in a while, but if I haven't made it clear, I am fairly redundant on that for a couple of rehearsals. And then after that, I use an old David Wilcox comedic trick, and he would say, "Look at your neighbors and see they were here last week. Take a look and see what they marked." Rather than me repeating it over and over again. I do reward good behavior like that, and I don't. I have a little bit of redundancy, but I don't let people know that if you miss rehearsal, it is on you to know if we introduce that piece next week, to know where the phrasing is. I'm not going to go over it over and over and over again to reward those that did not come. So I do show it with my gesture, and I agree. You got to give them something to watch you for, and that's what a lot of that, and that really comes through practice. Like in my rehearsal setting, knowing this is where what I call crisis moments. There are crisis moments in every piece. That's where they need me, and that's where they need the pencil. There are a lot of moments that are just driving down the interstate on automatic pilot. they that they're going to be fine with a lot of that other than breathing and energized tone. They're going to be fine, but there are crisis moments, there are roundabouts, there are stop signs. That's where they need me, so I give them something to watch. And I've taught my choir, look for the crisis moments, the cadences, the places where phrasing, where commas, where punctuation is. You educate them to those indicators and say, there's where you watch me, and you will get the answer. And so you just train them to that end.
Yeah. Well, you've already both have touched on this. So briefly, let's just explore for a moment how you address the community of the choir, not only as a director, but as a pastor, and finding the balance, like you say, with prayer at the end of rehearsal. Emily, how do you go about
I
that?
always start that time. Thank you. I always start that time with this phrase, for whom shall we pray? And Erlene Rentz, who is in my choir in Asheville, wrote an anthem. I encourage you to look at it. It's published through Morningstar, but for whom shall we pray? And I think that's an important time to lean into, as we've said, don't sacrifice it, don't belabor it. One thing I would add is that you do have to control it. There are certain people who like to talk longer than others. I use body language or proximity, eye contact, nonverbal cues, just to sort of control that time a little bit so that it's a healthy moment so that all people can participate. That's my wisdom there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Tim, anything to add on that? Assuming you have
No,
a similar.
mine's a variation. Yeah, mine's a variation. I say, "How may I pray for you?" And then we pray as a group. So I personalize it a bit, just and it indicates that I'm taking it from tonight on. It's not just this moment, but how may I continue to pray for you? And I'm with Emily. I do control it. Um, and if I know it sometimes, and I know it's going to come up, I actually bring it up. So, but I do allow for a little bit of spontaneity there, but it's hugely important. Community is one of the reasons people come to this group, and they need to know that that's part of what we do there as well.
Well, speaking of artful ways to cut people off and to pay rehearsal, I think it's time for me to find an artful way to conclude this interview with you. I just want to, before we conclude, in a sentence or two, each of you, what's your final little gem of advice to pass along to our fellow choir directors out there? Tim first.
There is a sense in which most people think what we do is absolute magic. All right. They don't know how we pull it off. Um, Realize that you are the magician and you control those aspects. And that world, that bubble world that we live in, is something that works for us. It really is a transcendent experience that we are creating there. So just know that you inherit that world. It's a huge power you have. So use it, I would say wisely, but it is there. So you are making magic. You are making something incredible happen and control it. Yeah.
Mm. Emily?
I would say bring your joy. I had a childhood pastor who had a very thick accent, and he would often say from the pulpit, "Where is our joy?" And
Mm.
so I think that there's a lot of struggle, there's a lot of sorrow, there's a lot of hardship that we all will go through. Everyone in the room is experiencing something. And if we can experience joy together, um, that's a lot of wind in our sails and a lot of gratitude to God
Mm.
to bring our joy.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for your time today, Tim and Emily, sharing all your invaluable thoughts and expertise with us. It's been an honor. And thank you to Polyphony members and those other guests who may have stumbled upon this video on YouTube. We are glad you did. Breathe, bless, and be well.